Well, good morning, everybody. This is Henry Overton with Turnkey Solutions. I am so very glad that you're here. We have a few more people hopping online, and we're going to give them a few seconds to finish hopping on. I know how I work on webinars is I usually show up at the last second, if not a few minutes late. If you can hear me while we're waiting for just a second, if there's a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen, I'd love to just, if you don't mind, just shoot a hands up or fire off a question or something just to let me know that you're there and can hear me. That would be awesome. We're just doing a last little final check here. We do have a few folks there. Ross, thank you very much. Richard, very good. Hey, Angela, good to see y'all. Well, thank y'all so much. All right, I'm going to just assume that everybody else. Okay, yep, I see you. All right, cool, very good. I think hopefully the audio is working for everybody, and we're going to go ahead and get rolling. And I want to again say thank you so very much for all of y'all coming on. We have a lot of customers with us that are our clients, and we have a lot of folks that are maybe on the fence or we've been talking to for a while, and so we have kind of a mixed audience here. And I want to let everybody know that it doesn't matter if you're currently my client or with Turnkey Solutions, or if you are somebody else's and you're doing all the IT inside yourself. The things that we're going to be discussing today are highly relevant for everybody in our community, everybody that realistically, sadly, has computers at their office, and we are very glad that you're going to spend the next few minutes with us. So I'm going to just go ahead and get started. The title of today's webinar is the 3 growing cybersecurity threats that you must protect against now, and how to avoid being the victim of a devastating ransomware attack, bank fraud, negative PR, or data breach lawsuit. And that's so that's kind of what we're going to cover today. The big stuff that we want to make sure and squeeze in today is we do have some very recent updates that it's just a nonstop thing that here at Turnkey Solutions we're constantly dealing with new updates and new threats and unfortunately new stories of people coming to us with issues. We want to make sure and cover that one of the biggest threats, the number one, in our humble opinion, threat that no product, antivirus, firewall thing can help you against. And we want to make sure and help you understand from our perspective and from real world experience about the shocking truth about bank fraud that most businesses don't know, that can wipe you out. And sadly we've got real world experience with that, with some clients that have experienced that, and prospects that have come to us after the fact. Why firewalls and antivirus software are useless against the new threats that are happening today, and they're just not enough. And we want to make sure that you understand that, and how mobile phones and cloud applications are seriously jeopardizing your organization's security and what you need to do to protect yourself. So that's kind of the high level 5 or 6 things that we want to make sure that we cover today. And ultimately, we want to make sure that you understand from our real world experience, from what we have seen, how to avoid being just a sitting duck, a duck in a barrel to the criminals that are out there working so hard to take everything from you that you've worked so hard to build. So we're going to cover that today. Now, if you'll hang on to the end, customers and prospects and just partners and friends in the industry, it doesn't really matter who you are. If you hang on to the end, what we're going to have is we're going to get you a copy of a dark web scan report. It is a free service that we'll provide. It's normally close to a $500 engagement for us to prepare this, but your time is valuable. And it's a customized report for you, your personal credentials and your company credentials. We're going to run against a dark web criminal underground marketplace. We're going to see where your credentials are currently being traded, and for our clients that we currently do that already for you real time, and we'll get you that latest report for you. So hang on to the end, because there's good stuff. There's a few other things that we're going to talk about towards the end too. Now, for those of you that don't really know me and we haven't worked a whole lot together, and I'm kind of honored there's quite a few of you on there. I'm a veteran IT strategist and a passionate cultivator of business success. I have been doing, to some degree or another, I've been a business owner since I was like 13, and you can see from the picture I'm not 13 anymore. I haven't had hair since, I don't know, a lot of presidents ago. So I'm one of the co-founders of Turnkey Solutions. We started this in 1999. We've been doing this. We've been really blessed to be doing this for almost 21 years now together. We have developed IT departments, security programs, compliance initiatives for just in those things, not the total list of customers that we've serviced, but just doing those kind of core security high-end services for over 400 organizations now, and it's just been a very great real-world education. I serve our clients primarily in the roles of kind of compliance, security, planning, strategy. Nowadays, we've got a fantastic team, and I'm blessed to be able to kind of stay in those territories. And I do oversee a lot of the HIPAA, PCI, and compliance services for our clientele. And at the heart of it, I love teaching. This right here, this kind of engagement is what I thoroughly enjoy, and I like to spend time with our clients and explain where this really impacts them and how the rubber meets the road. Now, that's a little bit about me, and I do want to explain a little bit about the company that I'm blessed to be working with. And I think the best way to do that is to hear it from some of our customers. One of our customers, here's a little quick case study. John Ampin, he's the technology director at Louisiana Housing Corporations, and in his world, he's in charge of keeping up systems that maintain a huge staff there, and they deal with companies and homeowners all across the state of Louisiana, and usually not when they're having a good day. And we support them in several roles. John's words were, Turnkey Solutions is second to none in the world as far as support and professionalism is concerned. The staff is very knowledgeable and abreast with changing technology. We've worked with them for over a decade and have always been very satisfied with their services. They respond to emergencies with ease, act quickly, and keep us updated when working on an issue until a resolution is reached. I highly recommend them to anyone looking for a professional IT partner or consultant. Now, that's John's words, and he's really, I got to brag on my team. He's primarily talking about the folks here who support him and provide him support 24/7 for the last over a decade, like he said. And we've worked with them in small projects and large projects on good days and bad days, and it's been an honor. From a smaller perspective, Doug Bozeman, who's the owner of Wastewater Treatment Services Organization and operations in Livingston, his words were, when our office flooded in 2016, our previous IT company didn't have our stuff backed up, and we nearly lost everything. That, by the way, was a common story we heard back then. We switched to Turnkey Solutions after that, and they've been very reasonably priced, responsive, and they have a very knowledgeable service team. So I love these words because they're not about me, they're about my team and about the experience. Now, all the experiences that our clients bring to us and that our team brings to us has been fed directly into the presentation that I'm going to bring to you, and the rest of this is real world experience that our employees, our technicians, our engineers, and our consultants here at Turnkey have brought to me and said, man, we really need to get the word out about this. So that's why I'm urgently informing you. And that's why we really put a call out to a lot of our clients and said, we need to talk. So this is a very pointed presentation that we have to be able to explain to you about some things that have changed. There have been a lot of things that have changed recently in the marketplace, in the cybersecurity threat landscape. Let's look at those. Just today's October 3rd, so not a whole lot's happened on October 3rd in the month of October, but just in this last quarter, some of the things that have been updated in our world is in July of 2019, that's just a few months ago, Governor Edwards declared a state of emergency after ransomware hit schools. A bunch of school systems and parishes all across Louisiana encrypted files. They shut down the phone systems. It was very gross, and he actually declared a state of emergency for the state of Louisiana. He's not the first governor to have done that, by the way. And September 21st, that was just a few days ago, Campbell County Memorial Hospital, and we could spend the next 12 hours, by the way, going through case studies, but these are just some very recent or very large or very pointed. I did kind of look through some of the people that were registered for the webinar, and I pulled some that are somewhat relevant. Campbell County Memorial Hospital, I think they're in Wyoming. They got hit by ransomware, and the real world result of it was that they had to send patients away and cancel surgeries, and now they have a HIPAA breach. In September of, also September 26th, DoorDash, they bring food to you. They'll go pick up your whatever, your pizza or McDonald's, and bring it to you. They had disclosed a breach that happened to them in May that affected nearly 5 million users. Now, I don't know if you've used DoorDash, but if you have, they're just one of several organizations that have had a huge breach, and that's tiny compared to some of the other ones that have happened this year, but it's just very recent. And in August of this year, one of the kind of key highlights is that the USA Today report, based on several studies, found that 2019 is on pace to absolutely set and crush the record for data breaches. That is a very sad stat. From a different perspective, the IC3, that's the Internet Crime Complaint Center, they're a global organization. What they've been tracking, now they haven't released a pretty chart like this, but next year their chart is going to be very small fine print because it's going to go way off the chart from here. But in terms of what they have seen thus far, they have seen a dramatic rise this year of complaints. Number of complaints in 2014 was 269,000, then 288. Then we've gone from 300,000 to 351,000 in 2018, and it has gone. What I've read recently is they're expecting over 400,000 this year, and it just continues to get worse. Now they are a global organization, so they're seeing things from around the world, and anybody can communicate with them. It's not just a United States organization. What we are also seeing is that the attacks are becoming extremely vicious. For the first time in history, cybercrime is now, and this is from a lot of different sources, it is now the most common crime against businesses. If you think about it, arson, theft, bank fraud alone, like writing bad checks or whatever, those may have been issues, and they are still issues that any business owner has to be kind of prepared for. But for the first time in history, 2019 is seeing that cybercrime is the top thing that you have to be prepared for. There were 137.5 million new malware samples, like things that the antivirus companies are finding out about, examples that they need to go write protections for in 2018. And In January, this is when this data was from, in January, there were 25 million new samples in 2019 already. So that's a little bit of an old stat, and I'm waiting on an update from that. Last year, what we saw is that 93% of malware was shapeshifters. That's what polymorphic is. Basically, they had the ability to land on your computer and evade detection by your antivirus in one of multiple ways. They basically are developing artificial intelligence malware that can see what kind of antivirus product you have and evade it real time while they're sitting on your computer. And that is getting worse in 2019. So here's a kind of a key number that has gone up sadly a lot. This comes from a study at smallbiztrends.com, but their number was $79,841. Now, what is that? What is that number? That is what they are very clear about is after a survey of thousands of organizations, that is the average cost of a small business's response to a breach. That's a small business, a tiny little business, 25, 30, 40 employees, and what that does not include, that's the real out-of-pocket expense to an owner for a breach for a cyber attack. What it doesn't include is the embarrassment, the cost of protecting your employees and your customers by buying credit monitoring or LifeLock or whatever you're going to have to do to kind of keep them around. Reputation damage, loss of credibility in the marketplace. We'll talk about that in a minute. Loss of clients for not protecting their data or being unable to service them. If you can't service your customer because you're fighting a breach, what's happening? You're losing revenue. If you're not making revenue, you're spending money. That's just business. Class action lawsuits, individual lawsuits. We live in one of the most litigious states in the union, and what we are starting to see is a lot of lawyers figuring out that there is some real money to be made in that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Compliance lawsuits, fines for non-compliance. If you're in healthcare or not in healthcare, there are now going to be compliance lawsuits. We'll talk about that in just a second, especially here in the state of Louisiana. And the replacement of data. What happens if your entire CRM or your accounts receivable gets wiped out? You've got to go figure out how to rebuild that. So that's just things that were not included in that survey by Small Business Trends, and just the real-time cost to morale and just the entire organization of just being down, fighting a huge, gross, preventable issue. Let me give you kind of a real-world example. We got this call in early 2019. A small manufacturing firm by the kind of the world standards, but they ship stuff all across the Southeast. In late 2018, the IT department got a call that kind of their core systems, their CRM, was just acting weird. And they found that some of the data had gotten a crypto locker on it, so they restored from those servers from backups. And they figured they had gotten it. They did find crypto locker, one of those things on a specific server, and they restored it. They went home. The hackers, however, had not been thoroughly eradicated. They didn't have adequate protections, and the hackers still had a computer somewhere in the environment that they had control over. So that night, after the IT department had done their daily duties and restored all the servers from backup and really kind of exhausted themselves, the hackers got right back in and repeated everything they had done before. They re-encrypted everything, but they did it at 2 a.m. in the morning when the IT department was completely crashed and snoozing. When they came back in the next morning, what they ultimately had to do was shut down everything and start one by one figuring out, okay, this server, let's rebuild that server from scratch, and then let this one, and then let's go do this computer, and then do this computer. And they had to do hundreds of systems, computer by computer to finally get the entire issue out of the way. It all would have been preventable had they been better protected and had the staff been trained, and just some very simple protections that we're going to talk about here had they been in place. It is just really, really, really tragic. Before it was all said and done, and the accounting department kind of added up just a few of the things that they were aware of. They knew from the PTO they had to pay, and from the losses from shipping things to the wrong people, because in the meantime they had to keep working. They had to ship, their product to their customers. They found that they had lost at least $250,000. And last I heard, the accounting department kind of got sick of adding it up, and there's other numbers past that, but they haven't released it to me, and I understand why, because it's horrible. It's embarrassing. If this stuff is so common, and this is something that we get the question about quite frequently, it feels like I say to my customers all the time, look, you got to be prepared for this, and it's a common question. Why don't we hear about it more? The sad reality is that what we are finding, and what a lot of the huge reports, is that most people don't know that they've been hacked until like 6 months later, or until they actually do an active risk assessment, because the hackers have learned, and a lot of goal-oriented hacks are not they're not stupid. They're making sure that they don't get in the way of your systems working until they've gotten what they want. So that you can go months and months without even knowing that you're hacked. It is horrible PR. A study from this year found that 83% of United States consumers said that they would stop or reduce spending at a company that experiences a data breach. I don't know why you would just reduce it. Either go ahead and use a different credit card, or stop. One way or the other, by the way. But if, for example, if we all found out that, not that they have, but if Amazon had gotten hacked and all their credit cards were stolen for all the people that use them, what this is saying is that 83% of people say they would stop or reduce spending with that company. So, and the legal ramifications are so huge now that most folks that are having a hack that know about this are trying very, very hard to get it over with, get it done, and not say anything about it to anybody. So that's why. Now, a lot of customers and people ask me, oh, where did this all come from? How? Let me set the table and kind of give you an idea. The basic idea of crime, period, is that back in the day, you could, for a very simple investment, you could buy a revolver, get on your horse, go to the nicest car in the train, and hold everybody up and get a pretty good reward. It was a small investment. But those guys wanted to grow their business just like you and me. So they said, well, how can we do better? And what they have found is that nowadays there is a marketplace of not just revolvers, but of the tools to hack businesses. And we'll talk about that in a bit, that they can deploy. And if they hack the right computer and they get lucky, they can find the credit card data from Marriott, or they can find the credit card data of all the users at so many of these companies. This is a really kind of a sickening stat and visual of this, and I'll see if I can show you this. That specific report shows a ton of organizations, and it's not even perfectly real time, but there's been organizations just in the last few months that have breached closer to 1 billion records. And so the tools are getting enormously sophisticated, and it is just getting easier and easier for hackers and for criminals, basically just your run-of-the-mill criminal, to use a smart tool to get a payload and to get a payday, I mean. Now, this is just a serious business. It is a real thing. We're not dealing with 13-year-olds living in grandma's basement, unless we're talking about the really smart and savvy ones. These organizations, what we are finding, are working teams of people with internal tech support in nice offices around the country, working very hard to steal our money. It just a few years ago, do you remember the JP Morgan credit card hack? It was a huge deal. Tens of millions of people, 7 million small businesses just in one hack, and they got tons of information from people that they were able to go out and use to make new credit card accounts or just use the credit card accounts that they stole. Equifax, that was from a year or so ago. And a lot of people, we talk about this, the Equifax hack, and they kind of say, well, so what? How's this going to hurt me? You know, I don't really care about that. Well, 27,000 people got their driver's licenses stolen. You know what they can do with your driver's license? A lot. 97,000 people got their tax IDs stolen. That means that they can go file your taxes and get your returns for you. And that seems like a nice thing, except for they're going to get the returns into their account. They got 209,000 actual credit cards. They got 146 million social security numbers, date of births, and names. You know what they can do with those 3 pieces of data? For the rest of your life, they can apply for credit cards in your name. And it's going to be very hard for people to stop and figure out that they're not actually you. That's what the real impact of that hack was. That's how it can actually hurt you. The impacts are kind of locally as well. Hackers, we talked about this real briefly just a few months ago. The ransomware event that locked up our schools and caused the Governor Edwards to issue the state of emergency. What it did is they actually locked up the servers, and some of the servers that they locked up were phone systems. Those Sabine Parish, Wichita, Morehouse, and a couple other parishes were affected, and it was a huge, gross issue. These things can shut down small businesses. They can shut down. These attacks can leave you with financial ramifications and having to look over your shoulder for your credit card history for the rest of your life, and they can have huge impacts just locally, and these are happening. And by the way, they weren't like I said earlier, they weren't the first school system to get hacked. How about this one? A few years ago, now on this website, Adult Friend Finder, they got hacked as 400 million people. And Ashley Madison, that was another one. They got hacked, and you know, for the purposes of this conversation, I'm not the morality police. I'm just here to keep your data safe. But let me ask you this: what we constantly struggle with is people say, "Yeah, but I don't do those kind of things. I don't go to those websites." Okay, that's great, but how about your executive team? How about one of your key salespeople? How about your employees? If they go to these places, or if they are on a system that gets hacked like this, what are we going to do when they come to the office and say, and they get blackmailed? One of the really disgusting hacks that we're seeing this year is the hack that it's CryptoLocker, and the hacker pops up a thing on your screen and says, "Hey, look, if you will give me, 5 Bitcoin or $5,000 or whatever it is today, if you'll give me that, I'll give you your files back." Or you can give me the email addresses and names of 2 people that you want me to hack. And then if I get on their systems, I'll give you your files back. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of people are probably thinking, I've got an ex and her lawyer that I'd be glad to give you right now, sure. So that concept of blackmail is a huge issue that it doesn't matter where you're going, but we have to worry about your team, and that is the concern. Now, what's the ultimate payday? What are we looking for? The number one thing, again, that we're seeing in the realistic outcome of the hackers, and we actually have some really sad interviews with some people that have kind of been anonymously willing to interview with some big news sources of how much money they make doing some of these hacks, but this is a huge business. They don't have to pay taxes. They don't have HR issues most of the time. They don't have half of the the limitations that you and I as business owners and leaders are dealing with, and they just get scot-free to be able to go ahead and make tax-free money. Anybody can buy the tools. It is a very simple market to get into. There are tons of websites where they can get tech support, and they can make really quick money. Some of the websites some of the hackers have admitted that they're making in the neighborhood of $300,000 a month. Some of these smaller organizations that have gone on record and kind of talked with some of the reporters anonymously. iTunes accounts sell for like $8. Physical credit cards sell for $190. And what we're seeing is that one successful hit, if they spend a few $1,000s on a tool and outsource the hack, one successful hit can pay the criminal $2,500 to $50,000 per event, per campaign, and that's a pretty decent payday. And even the amateurs with the basic tools can make 80 grand a month stealing and selling your data, my data. So that is the marketplace. What's enabling them? What's making it easy? And I'm going to kind of fly through this because there's some stuff towards the end that I want to make sure we get to. Is it's extremely easy to get into the business. There are literally hundreds of websites on the dark web where you can outsource 100% of this. You give them a list, and you bought the list from somebody else. And the hackers will outsource the hack, and you get the results. Everything being connected to the internet is making it extremely easy for people to get a foothold and to get computers to hack with. And there's a lot of resources out there that didn't exist 5 to 10 years ago. One of the things that's enabling them is the cops are too busy. They literally cannot chase the hundreds of thousands of incidents that are being reported to them. And so what we're finding is that a lot of the small business owners that are reporting this, they're under a certain threshold of how much they got stolen, and they're on their own. It might take them months to get a call back. The other issue is that the dark web is making it nearly impossible to catch them because we don't know where they're at. Physically, we don't know if they're in Nigeria or in Denham Springs. There's no way to physically trace them unless they really screw up. What do I mean by dark web? We get that question a lot. It's just a separate part of the internet. It is not advertised. You're not going to find a link to it on Google, but it is an interconnected set of network and IP spaces and web servers that just aren't broadcasted and advertised in places that normal non-criminals would look for it. Cyber criminals can operate there completely anonymously, and the sad reality is that it's estimated right now, this is a stat from like June or so of this year, that the dark web may have 550 times the number of websites and resources as the web that you and I live on. That's frightening. It is huge, the underground that exists, that is purpose bent on taking what you and I have. And we get this, that's great, Henry. I understand that the dark web is a big deal, but I don't think they're coming after us. the sad result answer to that is no, you're wrong. 1 in 5 businesses from a few years ago were a victim to cybercrime, and now what we're seeing is that in 2018, the reality is we're estimating it's probably closer to 3 out of 4 because you just don't know it, or because somebody very, very close enough to you to affect your business was affected. Half of the attacks are aimed at SMBs, by the way, which everybody on this webinar is a small to medium-sized business in some respect. It looks like there's a few people on here I don't know, but that's what the statistics from 2018 and 2019 are telling us. Now, why do they target you? Because you're low-lying fruit. You can't afford as much security as Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook do, so you're an easier target. Like we said, the lawyers aren't going to, or the FBI is not going to be as quick to defend you, and the laws safeguarding bank accounts under certain amounts aren't as strong. What we're also sadly finding is that most of the small businesses we talk to aren't doing the basic security measures like encrypting their data. So it's not only do you have lower protections, some of the basic protections we're just not seeing at all. Selling isn't the only motivation. We're seeing some bragging rights issues on the dark web, or people are saying, "Hey, I'd made this hack. It's pretty awesome." Blackmail, and the basic idea of like what they call hacktivists, where people are hacking companies because they just don't like them. They may find that your customer service is not up to their rigorous standards, and they feel like you deserve to be hacked. And that is, or maybe that you don't agree with them theologically or politically, and you're just somebody they don't like. And that's a sad result. And final point is that we are seeing for companies that do trade in some valuable corporate information, that espionage is still a very, very high motivation for that. And ultimately, what's that about? Money. So, key point: just because you are going to sleep good about this at night doesn't mean that the hackers aren't coming after you, and doesn't mean that your customers' information is any less valuable to the hackers. So the underlying question is, what are you going to do to be a great steward, not just a good steward, but a great steward of your customers' information? And that's ultimately what we've got to do. And we tell this to people all the time. The biggest thing we can't say enough is we just can't underestimate the importance of being prepared and being active in our defense systems and protecting yourselves. So let's look at this. Let's look at we just don't have time, sadly. We could literally talk for the next 24 hours straight about all the threats and still not cover them. But I want to really spend a little bit of time on the 3 biggest things that you can protect against. Sadly, study after study, for the last almost 5, 6, 7 years, I think it's about 6 years that I can think of, study after study that we've seen is that your employees are the biggest threat. There is no defense against somebody clicking on something and going somewhere to a website, or going to Facebook, which you may allow, and or just Dropbox or any of the websites that you allow, clicking on stuff and logging on and giving the hackers access to things, using free applications or stuff that you don't know about. It is just a common thing, and even good employees are and sadly, mostly it is good employees that are doing this. More people are bringing their personal devices, their cell phones, they're using your company email on their cell phones, and it makes it harder and harder for IT companies and network administrators to defend against this. We won't spend a whole lot of time here, but like at most organizations, we often have to wonder, like at Walmart, for example, the constant battle is who's going to steal more, employees or customers. And with a company of any size, when you let go of an employee or somebody who's not happy about how things are going, we really have to worry about what their response is going to be. This issue or concern about what we call shadow IT, the infrastructure that your employees are using to get the job done or to get somebody's job done, are they using Dropbox? Are they using LinkedIn or Facebook or any number of these thousands of websites that are out there to move files or data back and forth that you have no management of? Those are the questions that we have to be really keyed in on. What are they doing with their mobile devices? We got to move past that. But this is a really sad story. That this guy he's got a pretty huge business, a medical lab organization, and it just got updated this year, or I'm sorry, December of 2018 or so. That he actually finally won the case, but the FBI and the Federal Trade Commission spent over a decade trying to destroy this guy's business because a former IT company did something wrong and basically left them unsecure. So that was just an employee that's going to set you up. Now, the number two thing that we have to be prepared for, and it is a real deal, and we talk about it a lot, is that there are 350,000 to 1 million new malware threats are being released, and I'll leave it there. What's the frequency? Month, year? Sadly, it's per day. That's how many new viruses we are seeing and signatures and variations of it. You take across all the antivirus companies. This stuff is growing faster than anybody can keep up with it in terms of the actual viruses that are coming along. There are billions of records exposed. Like we talked about, this is a report from USA Today that 2019 is going to be the worst year yet. Ransomware is getting wildly sophisticated. The average ransom requirement or payout increased 89% in Q1 of this year. Like, people are getting, not only is there more ransomware out there, but the requests for pay is going up. The sophistication of it is getting better and better. This is a recent, from like just a few months ago, screenshot from one of the better viruses that allows people to pay on cash at Walmart, CVS. The sophistication of this is really, quite frankly, beautiful. And in this case, they're given a webcam. Now, you don't see it, but this is a webcam of the guy's laptop, and a lot of times they'll have a webcam picture of the person. It's saved for identification. That's nice. And they're giving them infinite number of ways to pay, and they're actually securing the payment portal so that, because the hackers wouldn't want your payment to them to get interrupted by one of their coworkers. So that's nice. So the sophistication of this is getting amazing, and like we talked about a little bit ago, the complexity and the perversion of this is getting worse. This year, this is a sad example. But this particular guy, he actually got caught. He messed up and got caught. He was putting porn on the computers that he hacked into, and then telling you, hey, I found all this junk on there. I'm going to let the cops know if you don't pay me. So even if they had not done something morally ambiguous or wrong, he was making it look like they had done it. And he got enough people mad that the FBI finally went after him, and he made some little technical mistake, and they found him. So the sophistication level of this is getting amazing. 60% of the most recent online frauds are accomplished through phones. 80% is going through apps. There are tons of apps coming out in the application stores. iPhone is not immune to this, by the way, but it happens all the time that an app gets pulled from the store, from iPhone and Google Play Store, because they found out that it was actually infecting people's computers. So these guys have no boundaries. They have no concerns whatsoever about doing this. And even if you're innocent, if they can find a way to make it look like you're not, they have found that there's a pretty good chance that you're going to pay. One of the other bits that, and we've talked about this, kind of led into it a little bit, is that the issues that result from a breach are wider than just your personal payout. What we are finding that is a breach where personal information, i.e. your first name, first initial, driver's license number, social security number, any other information, which, by the way, remember from the Equifax hack, like 147 million of those got breached. If you're breaching that on your, if a hacker gets that part of the data that you have on your customers, Louisiana law from last year, and I believe everybody on the webinar right now is from Louisiana, but Louisiana law is requiring that you report that within 60 days of discovering that. And that is now officially law. Now, every state is starting to enact those laws, and we are finding that it is not just healthcare that they're requiring that to do. If you're a plumber, if you are a manufacturing, if you are any industry and you maintain that, if you're in retail, if you maintain this information about your customers and you get breached, you have to report to the Louisiana government that this happened. And that is a huge change. So the issues with getting hacked are not so much that it is you got a virus and your computer runs poorly. It's now that your life is going to be living turmoil until God knows when you can resolve this. Now, the third issue is that the third and biggest threat from all these things is that the money that you get stolen, if the hackers did take your money, is not often protected from the FDIC, especially if it's a business account. I'll flip through this, some real world, horrible, sad stories. The story that I usually tell folks is from a real world prospect of ours, a tiny. Now we've got other huge organizations that have come to us, but these guys had 4 computers. They came to us last year, and they didn't know they'd gotten hacked. The hackers monitored their activity for weeks. They learned how these people logged into their online banking, and they went and transferred. They waited until their cash flow was at its peak, until the most money in their, they actually observed their accounting cycle, by the way, and they waited until the most money that was going to be in their accounts was in it, and they transferred that all out the night before a big job, before they had to go to their suppliers. So this is, and all that would have been preventable had they been better trained and better protected. So these are, it's sad, but there are so many real world stories around this. If and when your business falls victim to a cyber attack, depending on what happens, what we are unfortunately seeing is that the law will look poorly on you. Your customers are going to blame you. The law is going to blame you. You'll need to notify your clients. If the news gets out to your competitors, it will be disastrous. That is I can't tell you how much that would be horrible to any one of us. And the cost of restoring the data and work, like we talked about earlier, can be close to $80,000 before you really finish adding it up, even for the very small businesses. So what do we do? What do we do? There are so many simple things that we can do. You may be asking yourself, holy moly, Henry, we've talked about the malware where people are making it look like my employees have no morals. We've talked about bank fraud. We've talked about the hacks and how they're going across millions and billions of records, and the breach laws have gotten worse just this year, and we are having hacks very, very, very close to home. What do we do? What do we do? There are so many different forms of advice around this, and I think it's pretty basic that we have to start somewhere. We have to start with understanding your level of exposure. Now, for my customers that are on this call, I would like to inform you that we do threat assessments in your environment, and we do look at a lot of things on a regular basis, but we do not look at every possible thing because we don't know every possible thing. And that's why I would love to encourage every one of you to engage with us and stop and say, okay, let's think through all of these questions. We will be able to answer these questions of where your security is, what technical systems do we see in place, but where are you exposed to risk? Oftentimes we find that companies know that in ways that I would never be able to know. They may know that, look, we do this transaction over here in this place, or we use this system, and we've never really told you about it because we didn't think you needed to know. But a threat assessment where we really have an engagement with every management level person and the ownership and the IT, where we look at, here's the protections that we have in place, and here's the places that you do business, and how are we protecting every step of that data. That level of conversation has to start as soon as you can, and you can start driving that. I'll give you a way to do that. Now, from there, step 2 is we've got to create an action plan and implement it. You can't fix everything today, but what we can do is, based on the threat assessment, start implementing controls. Look at what simple things you can do today to start patching holes, start implementing basic security measures here and there, and put into place things that are now industry standard and very cost effective. But from there, don't leave it. These are not one and done things, but ongoing maintenance. You can't do a set it and forget it, and you can't do a risk assessment once a quarter or once a decade and then just leave it be. Depending on the size of your organization, this has to be kind of a mindset and an ongoing practice. The idea of an ongoing training program is so important, that what we're finding is that most of the hacks are at some point or another involving a human. They're emailed in and somebody clicked on it, or it's a link on a website or an app that the user clicked on, and it's completely bypassing firewalls, antivirus, all those things, because that's just the level of sophistication we're dealing with. But if we can train your staff and test them on a regular basis, they will be much more engaged in your defense, and they will be much more prepared, and it just works. There's a lot of numbers around that we can share. Now, there's a simple step for today. What we're offering is that threat assessment and a dark web scan for your organization. We can do that first step and kind of get you an understanding of where your risks are right now. We can start scheduling that out, and what's going to happen is that we will discover, we're going to look into the dark web, and we're going to find out where your credentials are tossed around. And I can pretty much guarantee you, you have passwords that are floating around. If not, then maybe it's an account that got created a week or two ago. But we'll look up your personal accounts and your business, and show you where those are being sold on that dark web. We'll look at where your IT systems are secured against the latest threats. There are constantly evolving security protections that are not everything, but they are very important to have in place. It is very much akin to, if we lock your doors, you are more secure than the neighbor that does not have their doors locked. If we lock your doors and we put on the bars across it, you're more secure. If we lock the doors and we put on a camera monitoring system for your front door, you're way more secured, and you actually have a chance of being able to figure out who's trying to break into your house. So there are protections that we need to put into place. We have a defined list of what those are, and it sadly kind of constantly grows as the marketplace for the hackers gets more sophisticated. But we're going to give you a number. We're going to give you an actual score and show you how you rank against other companies kind of roughly comparable to you. And we're going to actually work through and show you if your computer backups would allow you to restore your data. Sadly, most of our first-time engagements with folks, we find that the backup that they had wouldn't be everything. So we want to make sure, and we will be showing you that. Now, there are other things that we'll be able to deliver to you. What we're going to, it's going to include that dark web scan to show you your credentials, and we will also include this free report that we put it together direct from my Vice President of Operations and our service team, of a simple checklist for your employees to be able to create hard-to-guess passwords to protect your organization. If you are using password 1 or password 2, or if you've really innovated and gone for password 3 with an exclamation mark after it, trust me, the hackers knew that about 10 years ago. And if you're using the name of your kid or the name of your dog or the name of your mother-in-law, the hackers know that, and they can find that information on public websites. And we need to show you and your staff how to write passwords that are way more hack-proof. And we'll include that in the results for your audit. There's no charge, and we're not going to ask for anything. This is not on this slide, but if you are a customer, we will do this, of course, at no charge, and we are currently actively doing this for all of our managed services clients, but we need your engagement. Regrettably, I can only offer this for 5 net new customers, people who are not under contract in October, just because it does take a lot of time to engage at this level, and this is by application only. Now, for our clients, and I think all of y'all have stayed on the line, which I'm honored. For the clients, if you will fill out the form after this, we will, if you want to, or just email, you know how to get a hold of us, or call us, or put in a ticket, or whatever you want to do this. If you fill out the form, we'll handle it that way too. But let us know when you're ready to do this and to work through the engagement. For new customers though, or prospects, this is by application only, and we do not expect any payment from it, and no obligation. Here's the website to go to: turnkeysol.com/cyber audit. What that'll bring you to is just a quick form where we need to know a basic little bit of information about you, and we'll get back in touch and get that started. So there's that. And we're out of time here. I got to tell you, I really sincerely every one of you customers and every one of you prospects that are just partners in the industry and friends that are on the webinar. I got to tell you, we really appreciate your business, your partnership, your place in the community, but you cannot think that this stuff won't happen to you. This is nonstop. In our world, sadly, we see these things happen to good people that thought they were too small or they thought they were too busy to deal with this, and these things happen. And that's pretty much all I've got for you today. Please do engage with us if you're interested. If anything that we went through today spoke to you, again, turnkeysaw.com/cyber audit. And for the prospects on the line, I really can only do about 5 a month because it does take a lot of time. And I am honored. Thank you so much for your time today and your attendance. And for if you have any questions, by the way, I'll stick around for just a minute or two, and we'll leave the line open if you want to raise your hand or do a question on the Q&A form. We'll be glad to hold the line open for a little bit longer and answer any questions. But if not, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I hope you all have a great lunch or wherever you're headed to next. And please do call with any questions if you're a customer and this made you think of anything. Thank you all very much, and we look forward to being of service to you down the road.